Hey there, my name is Porsha Lauri. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today I have brought to you another installment of my What Did We Learn series. And today we're going to be talking about one of my childhood favorite movies, Save the Last Dance. Save the Last Dance was a 2001 hip-hop inspired MTV teen romance, and it starred one of my favorite actresses, Julia Stiles, as well as Sean Patrick Thomas as our two main leads. So today we'll really be discussing the relationship between our two leads, Sarah and Derek, interracial relationships in the early 2000s, and some of the strangest fashion choices I've ever seen on camera, for sure. But if you like listening to my opinion on all things movies, TV shows, music, what have you, do me a solid and drop a like on this video, then run over to that subscribe button, hit the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload. I feel like usually I do some really overly drawn out intro, but I don't really have anything else to say. Let's just get into the movie. After ballerina wannabe Sarah loses her mother in a dramatic car accident while on the way to her Juilliard audition, she is shipped off to Chicago to live with her estranged jazz-playing father in a predominantly urban area. The first day of school starts rough with a heated book debate in Sarah's English class, but takes on a better outlook after finding a friend in Shamil, the sister to her new mortal enemy, Derek. Quickly, Sarah is invited to the Kick-It-Spot steps, but it turns out her moves are not so fresh. Derek offers to coach her and she accepts immediately. The more the two spend time together, the more they feel each other falling in love. However, there are many people in each of their lives who do not accept the nature of their interracial relationship. When Sarah decides to take a second chance at Juilliard, the pressure of preparing and the hate she's receiving from her relationship with Derek is a lot weighing on her shoulders. Will she be strong enough to see it through? So that's a little bit about Save the Last Dance. Now let's go ahead and break down the whole movie. So the movie really starts off with an emotional gut punch. We're first introduced to Sarah, who is on a train, and basically what we understand is that Sarah is a ballerina. She was auditioning to get into Juilliard. And if you're unaware of what Juilliard is basically like the ultimate college for the performing arts. Juilliard is the Yale of performing arts colleges. And so Sarah had gone to this Juilliard audition, and her mom had told her before she went to the audition she wasn't sure if she was going to make it. She was having a really busy day in her flower shop. I assume this took place on Valentine's Day. I don't know. There was a surge of roses that were needed though. And Sarah just basically begs her mom and says, if you're not at this audition, I'm not going to do well. I need you to be there. And so basically what we see is kind of hypercut between Sarah dancing and doing her audition for Juilliard and her mom on her way to try to see her. And of course on her mom's journey to the audition, she actually gets into a car accident. So already at the beginning of the movie, we feel really bad for Sarah. And I also think this is the first time that we get this overarching narrative about guilt. Cut to Sarah sitting on the train, and of course someone can't find any other empty seating except for the 5 chairs that surround this girl. And she sees this ballet magazine laying on top of Sarah's stuff. And she's just casually like, oh my God, I love dance. I don't think she has a southern accent, but she has some kind of clear, specific diction in her voice. And she asks Sarah, do you dance? And she's like, I used to. And then looks passionately out the window, and then it cuts to her being picked up at the train station by her estranged father. Now, once we get to the train station and Sarah's picked up by her father, we are immediately met with a lot of awkwardness. Clearly, these two don't really have any kind of close relationship, and so it leaves there's a lot unsaid happening in this scene. When I went back to rewatch this movie as an adult, I realized how much they kind of left unpacked there. I kind of felt like there was supposed to be this kind of sub-storyline of Sarah getting to know her biological father. Since the story was supposed to be about emotions and opening up and relationships, you would think that this would be a relationship that they might want to explore, and they don't really. Roy is really unnecessary to the story. He's just basically he provides the home in which Sarah sleeps, but for the most part, I feel like he's a really underutilized character. The only thing we really get from him is that he's her dad and he plays jazz. Also, he starts projects but doesn't finish them, and that's his entire personality. So we cut to the next day, and it's time for Sarah's first day of school. There's this thing that they're really trying to impress upon about the entire movie. It is trying to showcase a kind of fish out of water story, right? Main female white character and her being moving from the white suburbs to a more urban area. I don't want the entire video to be about the politics behind this movie. So I just figure if I kind of talk about it briefly now, then we can kind of just go through the rest of the movie, remembering that this is a silly teen movie that really doesn't matter that much. The student body is predominantly black. She goes through metal detectors when she first walks in through the high school. I would say that the background actors are far more rowdy than we see in clips of her in her previous life before she moved. So then the first scene that we get to when she gets into her first class is like an English lit class. And in this class, they are talking about a book written by Truman Capote, or they're having this book debate. I looked into like the debate they're having in the classroom, and this debate means nothing. This scene ultimately is just supposed to show that there is somewhat of a chemistry between these two characters, while also foreshadowing the conversations that we're going to be having later about white privilege and the black experience. So after Sarah's first English class, she's obviously a little bit, feeling a little uneasy. It wasn't the greatest interaction. Soon Sarah is at her locker and she puts down her backpack on the floor behind her. Look at how busy this hallway is. Why would you put your backpack on the floor where someone could ultimately trip over it? Like, don't be an asshole? I don't know. The important part of this scene though is that this is our first introduction to the character Chenille, the best character of Say the Last Dance, hands down. So Chenille walks by Sarah and she picks up her backpack casually. She turns and Chenille hands it back to her and says, "Don't leave your shit on the floor," because duh. And Sarah's like, "Oh, no one's ever told me not to leave my shit on the floor before." And it's a wild moment for her. Sarah goes off to lunch and she's looking around the lunchroom with her tray in her hand, the classic thing of, where do I sit? She looks around, she spots Chenille, she starts approaching her table, but then someone kind of cuts her off and sits down. Sarah gets scared off, so she goes and finds another location to sit. Chenille actually went and searched for Sarah. Chenille saves Sarah from the black nerds and brings her over to some of the girls that she rolls with. I'm gonna stop trying to say Chenille lines. I sound super ridiculous. Sarah gets kind of the overview of Chenille's friends. They seem to be very inviting of her, and there's even another white girl in the squad, so like, yay! She notices Derek sitting right behind Chenille, and she just says the word asshole out loud, which is not a kind of a weird thing to say to a new group of people you've never met before, but hey, do what you do. Oh, also, I'm in the group. Did you guys notice that? There's a character named Porsha, and she's part of Chenille's crew. She's got like 2 lines in the whole movie. But Chenille tells Sarah to be more specific about who the hell she's talking about, and that's when it's revealed that Sarah and Derek had a little rift, and Chenille says Derek is her brother. So we know that they're going to be forced to interact once again sometime later on in the movie. Foreshadowing. Then we're introduced to Malachi, who kind of serves as our antagonist for most of the movie. And Malachi comes off to be quite a scary guy, but we'll talk a little bit more about him later on when we're introduced to more aspects of his personality. The most important part that we need to know is that Derek and Malachi have been very good friends for a long time, and Malachi knows that Derek is very smart, and Derek is waiting on results back to hear if he's gotten into Georgetown, as Malachi puts it several times in the movie, doctor college. So kind of a lot of nothingness goes on for a little while. There's this weird moment where she's walking with Chenille and she stops Chenille because someone is dancing in the hallway, and Sarah watches this person dancing as if she's never seen a music video in her life. It's 2001. She knows what dancing looks like. I don't know why this moment is like such a pivotal moment in Sarah's first day at school. Anyway, moving on. Later on in a gym class, Sarah is on a balance beam doing pretty much next to nothing, but all of her newfound friends are quite impressed with her ability to stand on a balance beam. From the balance beam, they decide that this girl would probably be great at going to clubs with us. She should get a fake ID and we should bring her to the club tonight. And this is where we get our proper introduction to Snooki. Chenille brings Sarah over and tells Snooki that she needs to get hooked up for steps all the way hooked up for steps, which I'm guessing just means like she needs a fake ID so that she's able to get into the club. Which, like, side note, I don't know how one gets a fake ID, but I definitely don't think one should shout it on the front steps of your high school in broad daylight. But that's just me. So then Derek takes this opportunity to make a little fun at Sarah and suggests that maybe she doesn't know how to dance. To which Sarah replies, I do know how to dance, and I'll probably dance in circles around you. So later on that night, Sarah meets up with Chenille over at her apartment to walk over to steps. Once Sarah arrives, she realizes that Chenille is actually a single mom. Here's stereotype number 62. This is a pretty emotionally impactful storyline to have, and to just not really bother to explore it further begs the question, why put it in the movie then? All in all, I feel like they could have just made Chenille a regular teenage character. I don't think it adds anything to the movie per se, and I don't think we get to witness really like her triumphing all of this adversity. It's just that she is adverse. But anyway, the girls leave Chenille's apartment and they're off to the clear. And on the way there, Sarah's like, do I look okay? Because Sarah's been, you know, kind of comparing how she's dressed versus Chenille, and then once they find their other friends in their crew, she's like, okay, like, I don't think I'm dressed right. Chenille kind of gives her like a little mini makeover, which does make Sarah's outfit come together a little bit more. Sarah's like, it's from the Gap, and Chenille's like, it's country and you look country in it. So once we get to the club, this is where we're introduced to our female antagonist, Nikki. And Nikki is Derek's ex-girlfriend, who we don't know exactly why they broke up. But basically what we're to understand is they're exes, and she still wants Derek back for whatever reason. So Chenille introduces Sarah to Nikki, to which we get the infamous line, it looks like you brought the Brady Bunch to the, I don't think I should say this word on YouTube club. But also, I find as an adult that this is kind of a sticky conversation, and I don't know how to think about it. After this interaction with Nikki, we finally get down to the dance floor, and it's time for Sarah to show off her moves to Derek. She and Derek quickly realize that she cannot dance. Even with all of this ballet training and a potential Juilliard candidate, you know how music works. You know timing and rhythm. And even if you don't know how to dance hip hop, there is no reason that you wouldn't be able to at least move around without looking like you have two left feet. And I don't care if you were a ballerina, you would explore other styles of dance during your dance career. I've known enough dancers to know that you typically would not just do one style and one style only. By that age, you would have been to a school dance before. She would know the basics of how to move around without having pointe shoes on. So this scene is ridiculous, but whatever, we get our silly white girl can't dance scene that I think it's a requirement for all like early 2000s dance movies to have. And you know what? It is still kind of funny. It is funny when she's like bopping and she's like clapping off beat, and you're like, why are you moving like this? Even if you were a ballerina, no one would move like that. Derek and Sarah definitely have chemistry. I thought it works in that department. As far as this is supposed to be like a romance teen movie, like they sold it in that way. So Sarah and Derek are dancing and grooving along. He kind of takes her hands and guides her with the music, kind of two-stepping, as Nikki puts it. But then off to the side, Derek notices that his friend Malachi has gotten into a physical altercation, and he needs to go and split that up. Basically, Malachi saw a rival gang member in his area, which I guess Steps is his territory, so he goes and addresses him, and that's kind of how the fight breaks out. Now, since we have got a bunch of underage children with fake IDs in a club, everyone pretty much disperses because the night is now a wrap. Derek meets Chenille and Sarah outside, and this is where we start to get a little more insight into Malachi and Derek's relationship, as Chenille says, you need to stay away from that guy, he's bad news. Derek offers to walk Sarah home because it is pretty late at night. While walking Sarah home, he also offers to show her some new dance moves, so that way the next time she goes to Steps, she won't be as embarrassing, which she immediately accepts. I actually think that the the way that they get into the whole like them dancing together, practicing together thing is done somewhat smoothly. I feel like they could have done a very over-the-top slapstick way of him teaching her how to dance. I just feel like movies typically would make this some over-the-top scene that would get them into the point of the movie, but really it's just a super quick conversation he offers to teach her and she accepts. Sarah thanks Derek for the dance, and I think we cut to the next scene of them actually having their very first dance practice. Before we move on though, I would like to backtrack for just a second, and I'd like someone to explain to me what the hell is Derek wearing in this club scene? Like, what are these pants? Are they garbage bags that he sewed together into a pant? What is the fashion of this movie? So Derek and Sarah start doing their little dance practice thing. Super cliche, super predictable montage piece, but I love it. I love their interactions. I feel like it comes across super genuine. It makes a love story aspect of the movie really come alive. So during their dance practices, they also start to learn a little bit more about each other. We learn that Derek and Malachi were really close friends growing up, and they used to go and like kind of do wild shit together. But one time they broke into a convenience store and someone called the police. And during the chase, the cops were closing in on Derek. And so to take the heat off of Derek, Malachi, he set off alarms so that the police would turn their attention from Derek to Malachi. And Malachi ended up taking the rap for what had happened, which left Derek able to continue on his journey towards going to doctor college. So remember at the beginning how I said one of the overarching narratives of this movie is guilt? Well, we're revisiting that again through Derek's story as well. It makes it so that he constantly kind of owes Malachi favors, which always keeps him somewhat wrapped into whatever Malachi is doing. And Malachi is established as, you know, like an actual, like a gangster. Like, he's really out here on these streets. He is a scary guy to be to feel so indebted to. But it's also understandable why Derek would feel such a kinship to him because, you know, he did take the fall for him. Sarah then tells Derek why she's living in Chicago and basically what happened to her mom and a little bit of backstory about why she doesn't do ballet anymore. I really like the part where Derek asks her, "How's your relationship with your dad? You guys all tight and shit?" And Sarah responds, "Oh yeah, we're all tight and shit. Our DNA matches." And I always just really like that scene. There's a lot of really good quotable moments in this movie. We also see that Sarah and Chenille have really created somewhat of a bond, and Chenille tells Sarah how she's going to go off to design school and Derek is hoping to get into Georgetown. She also talks a little bit to Sarah about their biological mom and how she just left.
Okay, to clarify, she was in jail, but then when she got out of jail, she then left.
And that's why they live with Mama Dean, whom I'm assuming is their grandmother. During this scene, we find out that Derek has gotten into doctor college, so woo! And to celebrate Derek getting into Georgetown, he decides to take Sarah to the ballet, which I think is like probably one of the sweetest things ever. But before we can get to the ballet, we get this lovely train scene. Basically, Sarah and Derek are sitting on a train and there is a very judgmental older lady that seems to be staring at them. And so Sarah's response to this is like, let's give her something to talk about. I don't think it's deeper than surface level. I think it's exactly what you think it is. She notices someone watching them and she's like, I'll give you a show then. Moving on, we get to the ballet and Sarah nearly doesn't want to go inside. Obviously, ballet holds a certain level of trauma for her, seeing as how she was so deeply affected by the death of her mom and how that's very much intertwined now into her ballet career. But Derek ultimately convinces Sarah to go inside and they watch probably one of the most sensual plays I've ever seen utilized in a movie. But it's a beautiful moment. Sarah really has like a kind of an emotional breakdown during the performance. After the ballet is over, they go behind the theater to talk and Derek is like, you know, it looks like something's wrong, like what's going on in your head? And Sarah conveys that she's just really upset, you know, it felt like ballet took everything from her. And that, you know, her mom gave up basically everything in her life to put her through dance school to make ballet happen. And so Derek convinces Sarah that if this is still a dream that you have, then your mom would want you to keep pursuing your dream. And Derek promises to be basically her head cheerleader, and Sarah's like, okay, I think I'm going to give Juilliard a chance again. I think I'm ready to go back to ballet. This is also where we get our first kiss between Derek and Sarah, which is very sweet. I always really enjoyed this moment. I think the lighting in this scene, I just have to say, is like very romantic and sweet. And it's just a very nice moment for the two of them. So during this time, Derek and Sarah have both been working on her moves so that the next time she goes to steps, she's really ready to just show out. And tonight is that night. You know, as a kid, I always thought that this scene was like so epic. I remember I would rewatch the scene over and over and over and over again so that I could learn the dance, which no, I'm not gonna do it for you today. Looking back, this is not a good dance scene. We get, I mean, whatever this is, you know, clearly Sarah has made some improvements in her dance ability. This girl could never go to Juilliard. This girl is not that great of a dancer. She's just average like the rest of us. But then here comes our vampy antagonist, Nikki, and she's just here to stop the party. She literally puts her ass in between Derek and Sarah and kind of averts Derek's attention to dance with Nikki. And Sarah goes off and goes over to the bar because clearly she's upset, as anyone would be. Her ass literally was in Derek's hands. Malachi notices Sarah sitting alone, and he kind of stands next to her as she watches Nikki and Derek dance together, and he has the infamous line, "That's oil, your milk, ain't no point trying to mix." This, I really think, sets the tone for what the antagonists are going to bring to the table for our protagonists. But after the little dance fiasco, Derek apologizes to Sarah for dancing with Nikki, and they decide to get out of there for the night. Because, you know, after one dance, I mean, what else are you gonna do? Even though that they've been practicing for a while, I don't know that they had that much ready in their repertoire. Now it was time to leave so that they could go home and work on some more. And this is where we get the love-making scene. This is kind of the way I like love-making scenes. Like, allude to it, but like, please don't show it to me. I also think it's extremely on the nose that they had this cover of True Colors during this interracial sex scene, and I'm like, was that necessary? But it is kind of cool because Malachi is actually one of the singers on this cover, so we'll give it a pass, I suppose. So shortly after they have their first big night at Steps, Derek is asked by Malachi to accompany him on basically a drive-by situation with a rival gang, to which Derek responds, well, maybe. I'm not sure. I just got into Georgetown. I don't know. Malachi is basically upset because he thinks that Sarah is the reason that Derek is no longer sure if he wants to ride along, when in reality, I think Derek is just wondering if that's the right decision to make given his future. So then we get this cutscene that I actually really enjoy, and on one side we're seeing Sarah playing basketball during like a PE class, and on the other side we are seeing Derek and Malachi and his crew of friends playing a pickup game. On Sarah's side, her and Nikki end up getting into a physical altercation, and then on the other side we are seeing that at this pickup game that there's a car that comes by and something's happening out of said car, and they're hypercut together. So there's this constant like hypercut between the kind of two different worlds merging together, right? And this is where Nikki has a conversation with Sarah regarding white privilege and how she feels basically that it's incredibly unfair that she's with Derek. For the most part, I feel like this is coming from an unreliable narrator, so it kind of makes the entire conversation void because she's saying it from a place of jealousy. But what Nikki says really affects Sarah, and she starts to really internalize what Nikki was trying to say. Later on, we see Sarah accompany Chenille to take her son to the doctor, and Sarah brings up what Nikki said during their detention together. And I think Sarah's expectations is that Chenille is going to have her back and basically call out Nikki for being rude to her. But instead, Chenille only kind of reinforces some of what Nikki said. And I think this is the point of the movie that a lot of people have a lot of contention with. Chenille opened the door to have this conversation about white privilege and about her being in their world and things that Sarah needs to know about what the Black experience is. And it's all kind of overshadowed by the fact that Sarah's only focus is that people just don't want to see her and Derek together, whereas the focus could have been shifting from what Sarah could learn from being introduced, being part of this community. This conversation is just used as like a plot point to create conflict, but instead of having a broader conversation about racism. I can definitely see where they were trying to have a unique conversation that needs to be had about race relations, but they really floundered in that department. Much like the other small situations they were trying to introduce within this movie, like Chenille being a single teen mom, Malachi being involved in gang activity. Like, there were just so many stereotypes of the Black experience happening, and they made basically only one of these Black characters as being a productive teenager. You know what I mean? Like, Derek is the only one who's not that involved in crime, or doesn't have, you know, any kids. Like, he's on the kind of straight and narrow. That's whitewashing a story about Black people, right? By putting them into these narratives that we are comfortable seeing Black people in, instead of showcasing real experiences. I know, like, I want to keep it very light. I think this movie is not supposed to be that deep, and I like that they at least were trying to open the door to have these more informational conversations about race and interracial relationships and things of that nature. I just felt like they could have done more, but let me know what you guys think, you know? Okay, let's move on. So later on, we see Sarah and Derek at Steps again, and Sarah's on the dance floor dancing with Snook G while Derek is having a conversation with Malachi. And Malachi once again asks him, hey, are you going to ride with us on this next trip? Like, are you gonna be there? Are you going to be my ride or die? And Derek is still kind of giving him the runaround and kind of asking Malachi to not go. This is where Sarah and Snook G roll up on the conversation, and Snooky's just talking about them cutting it on the dance floor, and Malachi's irritated because he's like, dude, we were having a conversation, like, you super got in the middle of it. Malachi calls her trailer trash, and this is where Derek has had just enough of the situation, and he punches Malachi in the face. He punches his best friend in the face for Sarah. And ironically, this sort of is the beginning of the end of Sarah and Derek's relationship. The next day at dance practice, Sarah's really in her head. She's not really nailing the choreography, and Derek has to stop her, and he's like, what is going on with you right now? And Sarah finally says to Derek, I don't know that we should be together anymore. It feels as though he's opened up his heart to her and has gone so far as punching his own best friend in the face for her, and so this is just not fair in his opinion, that she's not willing to fight for them to just be together. And this is where Sarah and Derek ultimately break up. So even though Sarah and Derek have broken up, Sarah was preparing for another Juilliard audition. Sarah comes back to the apartment one day, and her dad Roy is there. Roy has actually during this time gone and finished all those projects that he had before. This promotes Sarah to have a mini breakdown. She tells Roy how things are all messed up with Derek and at school, and that all of her friends are mad at her, and she just wants someone to be at her audition who loves her. To which Roy responds, I love you, I'll be there. And I thought that that was really cute. Again, they had this whole like interesting relationship of the estranged jazz playing father that they really never dove into, and so we just kind of get this, whatever this wrap up is, of like Roy finally following through on things he said he was going to do and showing up to the audition. Back with Chenille and Derek, they're at the park with Chenille's son, and Chenille asks Derek basically what's going on between him and Sarah. Derek tells Chenille that they're broken up now, and this is where Chenille comes forward and tells Derek, hey, like, I might have said something that made Sarah double think your relationship. Chenille also begs Derek not to go on the ride with Malachi and says that, you know, it's really not in your best interest to be around that guy anymore. Like, you have so much going for your future. You just got into Georgetown, and that guy is a whole big old mess, and he's going to drag you down. But Derek has an epiphany now that he knows kind of who got into Sarah's head. So Derek leaves. He tries to go and stop Malachi from doing his ride along, which of course pisses Malachi off, and basically he decides that Derek is dead to him at this point. And later on we are shown that Malachi did go through with the drive-by, and ultimately he was arrested at the end of it, and that's basically the end of Malachi's storyline. So no redeeming qualities for that character either. I forgot to mention earlier, but Chanel does have a baby daddy named Kenny, and we see him, I think maybe a whole 3 times through the movie, but he's shown to be not the greatest baby daddy or father figure for his son. So now we fast forward and Sarah is at her Juilliard audition. She has done all the other phases of the audition system, I guess. I don't really know how you actually audition for Juilliard, but I wouldn't say that this movie was a play-by-play of how that actually works. It's time for her original choreographed routine or whatever. She fumbles during the choreography and she takes a second, they cut the music, and they're gonna give her a second to kind of restart and regain her composure when Derek flies into the audition room, which is not how auditions work, and I'm pretty sure that door would be locked and he wouldn't just be able to do that, and they would for sure kick her out once he showed up, but whatever. Derek shows up, gives Sarah a few words of encouragement, and then she restarts her routine. And then we get whatever this is. Holy shit. Okay, so I saw a lot of people talking about this and how ridiculous this dance is. And I always thought I was like, you know what? They're just being too mean. I don't think the dance is that bad. But then I rewatched this movie. And then I watched this scene and I was like, it's not good. There are some good elements. And I'm not trying to shit talk Julia Stiles. Don't get me wrong. I love her. And I think that she is a good dancer for what they needed. Like, she was fine. But like, this is not Juilliard levels of dance. But basically, after she auditions, it's a fantastic routine and she blows the judges away with her just incredibleness. And even one of the judges is like, it's too soon to say, but welcome to Juilliard, which is like for sure not allowed. You for sure can't do that. Nor would that happen, but whatever. Again, this is a silly teen movie. And that is Save the Last Dance. So now we're gonna take a look at what did we learn from Save the Last Dance? I think one of the biggest plot points covered in this movie is actually guilt and the behaviors that you do associated with guilt. I think that was showcased a lot with Sarah because she felt so guilty about her mom missing her audition and dying as a result of trying to get to her. And then Derek with Malachi for taking the rap on something that he was a part of, also overcoming those things by ultimately doing what was best for them. Sarah went back to dance. Derek left Malachi behind. I think at the absolute core of this movie, I think that what they were trying to sell was that love is love. And whoever you love is whoever you love, and that's fine. Now, I do think there are some things that as an adult I have learned from this movie, and that's one, that they were passing out fake IDs like candy once upon a time. Because I feel like almost every teen movie I watched growing up had some minor storyline about kids getting fake IDs. Tell me if you recognize those from a lot of movies from when you were a teenager. And lastly, there needed to be a lot more justice for the character Chanel. Like, Chanel was just so great. I really enjoyed her presence. She had some of the best one-liners. She was genuinely really funny and bubbly to watch on camera. I would watch a whole spin-off movie that was just about Chanel, and we could have cut everything else. But yeah, justice for Chanel. She was the GOAT for sure. All right, so I just wrote down like a couple trivia things that I thought would be kind of interesting, and then I'm gonna wrap it up and let you guys get out of here. So Julia Stiles has said that she prepped for about a month in advance of the movie, but there was a lot of conflicting information about her dance background. The thing I know for sure though is that she has said in interviews she did train in order to perform the majority of the dancing in the movie. So the majority of time we are actually seeing Julia Stiles moving. This was Kerry Washington's first movie. Isn't that wild? She was like 22, 24, somewhere in there when she made this, and she was actually a teacher at the time, like a substitute teacher at the time that this movie came out. Sean Patrick Thomas, who played the lead role Derek, was actually 31 at the time of filming. Isn't that wild? Julia Stiles was 19, but that was Save the Last Dance. As always, I want to know what you guys think of this movie. What's your favorite character? Do you have a favorite scene? Do you have a least favorite character? Tell me all of your opinions about Save the Last Dance down in the comment section below. And also, if you look in that description, I added 3 sources for some articles I read about people's opinion of their reaction of this movie during the anniversary of it last year. And I think a couple of the articles are really funny, so I highly suggest you give them a little peek. As always, if you like my opinion on all things pop culture, movies, TV shows, music, what have you, do me a solid and drop a like on this video, then run over to that subscribe button and hit the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload.
So I'm gonna start doing this thing at the end of my videos where I do an editor's note. Sometimes when I'm editing a video, I realize I forgot to bring up a topic I wanted to discuss, or I didn't bring up something that I should have. And so I'm utilizing this time at the outro to kind of bring up anything I forgot. So a couple of things. I did spend the majority of this movie really critiquing the plot and the few conversations that the movie opened the door for but then didn't follow through on. But I wanted to say I still genuinely like this movie. I think that the acting, although I didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about it, is actually pretty believable. I think the relationship between Derek and Sarah really came alive for me, and it worked for me. I really enjoy this movie. I will still watch it time and time again, regardless of the small political things that I have issue with. I also wanted to mention, because I totally forgot in this video, but this movie was actually this movie was actually written by the same guy who went on to do Step Up and the Step Up franchise, and I thought that that should be mentioned because I love the Step Up movies too. And if we really want to like think about it, a lot of Step Up, the first one, is kind of Save the Last Dance, but just with Channing Tatum instead of Sean Patrick Thomas. So I thought that that puts a lot of the movie back into perspective when you realize that this movie was written by a guy who his whole thing was doing like dance romance movies, and also for the fact that this movie was written by a white person. So it kind of makes sense as to why a lot of these topics aren't further delved into, because, well, how could he without experience? At the end of the day, again, I find this to be a fun movie. I definitely think you could check it out and have a lot of fun watching it. But yeah, also, as if you couldn't tell, I changed my hair. So that's why some of my YouTube art is going to be changing and updating, because I had this whole green theme going on for a while, and now that my hair is also green, I don't want to just be in a sea of green constantly. So you'll definitely be seeing a little bit of like I guess you could say my aesthetic on my YouTube channel is going to be updating a little bit to coincide with my new hair color. I've also signed up for a couple other social media platforms, so make sure you check those out in the description. I'm on Letterboxd now, and I'm on Goodreads, and I'd love for you to follow me there. As always, I'm still on Instagram, Facebook, and I have a Twitter. I just don't really use it very often, but feel free to follow me there. Maybe I'll use it if you guys start following me. But that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Bye.